Our words of a modern-day prophet come to us today from Henry Nouwen. Grateful people learn to celebrate even amid life's hard and harrowing memories because they know that pruning is no mere punishment, but preparation. And our scripture passage for today comes to us from the Gospel according to John, chapter 15, verses 1 through 11. Jesus is speaking. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He removes every branch in me that bears no fruit. Every branch that bears fruit, he prunes to make it bear more fruit. You have already been cleansed by the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me as I abide in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me you can do nothing. Whoever does not abide in me is thrown away like a branch and withers. Such branches are gathered, thrown into the fire and burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask for whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. I have said these things to you so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. Will you pray with me, please? May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be truly acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. During my recent vacation, my husband Mark and I decided to remove the shrubs from in front of our house. They were very overgrown and making it difficult to do the repair work that our front porch needs. We have a small electric chainsaw, which we thought would be sufficient to cut down the small trunks of the shrubs. Turns out we needed more power than our dinky little saw could muster. So we started thinking about friends who might have a larger chainsaw, and Arthur Zorn came to mind. I got in touch with him, and he was happy to bring his chainsaws over and help us out. After the big shrubs were down, I asked his opinion about the lilac bush at the side of the house. In his particularly impetuous way, and without hesitation, he said, "Prune it all back, and in a year or two, it'll come back beautifully." So we did. I tell you, that lilac looks pretty pathetic now. I hope we haven't killed it. Pruning is a brutal act. I have to admit that it hurt me to watch those just budding lilac branches be cut back. Somehow I didn't feel quite the same way about the shrubs. They seemed to have lived a long life, which had now come to an end. But the lilac was getting ready to bloom. It was about to have green leaves and beautiful rosy lavender blossoms that smelled heavenly. Now I know that the bush was not as healthy as it could be. In fact, it was looking pretty straggly. And even though it was about to leaf out and bloom, yet it was sad to stop that process of even the small potential of beauty. And the risk comes with the worry that maybe we went too far and killed it. Pruning is not often a subject that is reflected in a sermon. There are only 7 references to pruning in the Bible, and 4 of those references are to pruning hooks, a tool that is used to prune. Yet, in our lectionary passage from the Gospel of John for today, we have one of those references, where it says, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He removes every branch in me that bears no fruit. Every branch that bears fruit, he prunes to make it bear more fruit." You will also notice in this passage that it contains one of Jesus' "I am" statements. In the first three Gospels, Jesus tells parables to teach. Yet in the Gospel of John, Jesus uses metaphor through the use of these "I am" statements. There are 7 "I am" statements in John, each illustrating a characteristic of the divine nature of Christ. Last week we heard Jesus say, "I am the good shepherd." This week we hear Jesus say, "I am the true vine." I have always loved this metaphor of Jesus as the true vine. The first time I preached on this passage was my last Sunday at my first congregational church in Stratford, Connecticut. On that Sunday, I focused on the connection that we still would have as disciples of Jesus, even if we were miles apart. The visual image of us still being connected like a vine through the love of Jesus was a beautiful image and was comforting to all of us as we said goodbye. But today, in this passage, I am focused instead on the actual idea of pruning, of cutting the vine back. It is certainly not as warm and fuzzy as focusing on the love that connects us. But that is not to say that it isn't still a loving message. Ask any vine owner. The one thing about vines is that, like my lilac tree, they need careful pruning in order to flourish, in order to fulfill their potential to produce much fruit. This passage from John reminds us that even Jesus, the true vine, and we, the vine's branches, need the occasional pruning to encourage new growth and fruitfulness. We won't get far if we are weighed down by old wood, or if our energy is being put into lots of little shoots headed off in all different directions. God, as the vine grower, has the responsibility of careful pruning, cutting away the dead wood and encouraging the growth of the most promising branches so that the vine can be as healthy and as productive as possible. Now, it will not surprise you to hear me claim that Christianity is almost certainly in a time of pruning, not only at Bethany Church, but in the wider Christian church as well. As I have been saying for years, the Christian church is moving from the center of U.S. society to the margins. We no longer have pride of place, or the privilege of folks simply knowing about Christianity because of the ubiquity in our culture. The Christian vine being cut back, whether that is intentional on God's part or simply a demonstration of the swing of our culture's pendulum. A recent Gallup poll in March of 2021 shows for the first time in 80 years less than a majority of Americans are members of a church. It indicates that hundreds of churches are closing each year. Yet the same poll shows that while folks are not interested in being formal members of a religious institution, they still have interest in spirituality and will cross denominational as well as religious lines to participate in spiritual practices. The reality is that we here at Bethany are in the process of being pruned. Some of that pruning is external to us simply because of the culture we live in. But some of it is intentional. Internal pruning that we are choosing to do with God's guidance. The pandemic has inspired the sense that it is time to prune the vines of Bethany, to clear away those things that are no longer serving us or the people that we are seeking to serve. Both the external and internal point back to God, the divine pruner at work. Some of the pruning that is happening is of a practical nature. If you haven't read this week's kiosk, make sure that you do, so that you know about the Great Bethany Cleanout. Under the leadership of Joanne Hardy and Gary Rogers, we are cleaning out the church building, every closet, shelf, nook, and cranny. Or, as Joanne puts it, we are clearing out the old energy in the building so that we can welcome in the new. This project will unburden us of the old wood, the things that may be holding us back or dragging us down as we seek to become Bethany for the future. It will make our space feel lighter, more open, easier, and more versatile to use. Some of the pruning will be trimming back some of the little shoots that on lilacs are called suckers, so that we can focus some of our energy on growing and bearing new fruit. The board of directors of Bethany are hard at work looking at developing Bethany Center for Spirituality and the Arts, which is designed to meet the needs of a culture that is still in search of spiritual nourishment, but leery of joining a particular religious institution. In this way, we can continue our mission of serving our neighbors by offering supports for their spiritual health. And we aren't pruning back everything. We have a committed and enthusiastic staff who are open to cultivating both current and new ministries. We have strong, healthy branches like Bethany Bowl and our sister parish relationship with San Antonio Grande that are important and vital ministries. Yet for all that care that we are using and trust that God uses, pruning the church vine is still a brutal process. And if we think about ourselves as the branches on the true vine that is subject to holy pruning, that brutality can be unsettling, to say the least. What will be cut away? Is it something we will miss? Is it something that we value? It might be. What will we look like afterward? The pruning might indeed be painful. It may be scary. It may be sad. It may feel like it could lead to our death instead of to fruitfulness. Here at the beginning, we may look as pathetic as my lilac bush currently does. This is where it is good to listen to the great spiritual writer and teacher Henry Nouwen, who is our modern-day prophet for today. He writes, "Grateful people learn to celebrate even amid life's hard and harrowing memories, because they know that pruning is no mere punishment, but preparation. To cut back the old branches, to accept that we Christians are no longer at the center of society, to relinquish our hold on old ways and the things that we were used to do with them, is sad and hard, and maybe even for some harrowing. Yet it is important to understand that we are not being punished in the process. We didn't do things the wrong way and now need to change in order to do them the right way. Instead, we can celebrate and be grateful, very grateful, for all the ways that Bethany Church has lived the Christian message in Montpelier for the past 213 years. And, at the same time, we can prepare for the future by doing the pruning that is necessary, that will allow us to be the most fruitful we can going forward. And through it all, we can remember that it is love that is binding us together as a community of faith. In the same way Jesus talks about the vine connecting the disciples to him and to God, he says, "As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love." Love, like a vine and its branches, continues to connect us to Jesus and to God, and in the midst of that love, we need not be afraid. May God bless the pruning of Bethany Church, that we may flourish and bear fruit in love to God's glory. Amen.